Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, and we're coming to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we're looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, products, and the people, of course, that are making a difference. And we're going to be talking about the nation of India, almost 1.4 billion people now, very dynamic, very vivacious people, and at the same time bringing new green technologies and new green practices to the world. And so we're going to be talking to someone that's representing a very famous international foundation. This is the Sehgal Foundation from Haryana, India, and also has a headquarters in the United States. And we're going to be interviewing Dr. Surinder Suri Sehgal, who is the chairman and founder of this foundation. He's going to be coming in by Skype. And sitting right beside me is a good friend of ours that comes on time to time, EmeraldPlanet. This is Dr. Daman S. Walia. He's the president and CEO of ARCTECH. And thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you, Sam.
Glad to have you. Dr. Sehgal, are you there, sir?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Well, welcome to the EmeraldPlanet TV.
Thank you. Good, nice to be here.
Glad to have you. And describe a little bit for our viewers your foundation that you established a number of decades ago now.
Yes, it was, the foundation was established in 1999 in India. It is organized as a trust, but we made sure that it is not, although it is called charitable trust, but it is for development. And we decided we will not do any work in charity per se, but focus our efforts on the development projects.
Well, I think the work that you're doing, because you're in Haryana state, and you have the Haryana is the capital of that particular state, but you selected a very special area to go into and work with. Tell us a little bit about the area that you selected, and why did you select these areas, working with the agriculturalists there and also with the local villagers?
We selected Mewat district in Haryana. Mewat primarily because Mewat has very, very low social indices. You look at the literacy, you look at the per capita income, you look at the ratio of boys to girls, and you look at any development, you look at the connectivity, whether it is electronic connectivity or physical connectivity, it has all those very poor indices. We said that to ourselves, we said that if we can make a difference in the lives of Mewatis or Mewat people from Mewat, then we can probably replicate those models anywhere in India without any problems. This was a challenge we took on, and that is why Mewat district was selected. And also I want to mention that when we went to the villages, to Mewat villages, we saw a lot of helplessness and a lot of despair in the eyes of the people because they felt they have been left out of development process. We felt that if we could change their mindset and convert helplessness into hopefulness, we would have made a big dent in the lives of the people.
I think this is fantastic. Of course, by selecting this particular area, as you were saying earlier, if you can actually bring change and a new dynamic within those communities, you can replicate that across India and indeed around the globe. So we congratulate you on that, Dr. Sehgal. Your wife's name is Ada. Tell us why you were willing to take your own personal funds and invest in having this nonprofit, which is now international nonprofit, instead of doing other things with it. Why do this kind of work?
My wife is originally from Germany, and we met in Cambridge, in Massachusetts, while we were students. And when the businesses, which we jointly owned the businesses, my wife and myself and so our children were also shareholders. When we got wealth, when we sold our business got divested and it was purchased by a very large German company. At that time, it was called Aventis, and now it is owned by Bayer. Bayer is a very large pharmaceutical agricultural company in the US. And Bayer, everybody knows now in the agricultural field, because Bayer recently acquired Monsanto, subject to certain approval, and paid, I believe, 66 or 65 or 66 billion dollars. And when we got that wealth, the money, all that money, we said what to do. Now we had a little bit dilemma because we have a very simple way of living. We didn't want to be ostentatious with our living style. We wanted to maintain the same standard, maybe slightly higher, but nothing extravagant. We said it is best that we help the people because we had seen a lot of poverty in rural India, and also we remembered what Gandhiji had said, the father of the nation, that remember. It said that this wealth does not belong to you, it belongs to the society. And keep what you need for your legitimate needs and spend the rest on the society. I think those are very wise words. I think we kept some money for our retirement, but we said we are going to use our other resources, whatever resources we have, into this development work in rural India.
I think that's absolutely fantastic, and I think it's very important. Every time I hear about people with great amounts of wealth, and I'm thinking about how many wells or how many health clinics or how many schools or school uniforms that could be, provided to people that really need it, in India and many other countries. And so I really like your way of thinking. One last question before Dr. Walia is going to ask you one. I think this really goes to the vision and the intentions that you had when you started. Tell us a little bit about your vision and what kinds of things did you really want to achieve through the nonprofit that you have?
People like us, we don't come from the development field. I am a trained scientist, but most of my life was spent in business development, agricultural business development around the world. And so natural inclination is that we must go through this learning process and not just go by textbook. We said that we must experiment, being a scientist. That is a normal way to do. We said our vision at that time was very, very simple, and is most important to take a complex issue and reduce it to a couple of small targets. Then you can achieve success. So we said, we will focus on the two major problems in India, what you mentioned, that 1.4 billion people now. At that time, it was about 1.2 billion people. I'm talking of 1999. And we said, biggest problem in India are two. The population, and second is the wealth or lack of wealth in the villages. So we said, okay, since we are from agriculture, if we could help farmer to increase agricultural productivity, and we could stabilize the family size, because the Mewat area is poor because family size is very large. We said the average family size in this area is about over 7 people. So that's a lot of people. So the question was, if we could stabilize the family size and we could increase agricultural income, we could get the development cycle going. But tell you, this is a simple way of thinking, because I will come to it later, that That was our thinking. This is what we thought need to be done. But we forgot that the beneficiary, we need to talk to them at that time. We just went from a top-down approach in the very beginning, which we learned very quickly is a big mistake. We need to go from bottom up and talk to the people first. What do they require? We can say that it is you need small family size. Do they care? So I think it is very, very important that we learn. Thank God we learned very quickly that we need to talk to the people in the villages and see what their needs are rather than what our requirement is.
Yeah, and I think that's critically important to do that. Too many people are talking at others instead of talking with others. Dr. Walia, I think you have the next question.
Yeah, Dr. Suri, I really thank you for doing what you're doing. One of my question to you is that how did you formally establish the reputation of this foundation, which really is doing some remarkable work there right now?
That when we started in 1999, as I said, first was experimentation phase, couple of years, We sort of wasted time but not really wasted. We learned a lot. At that time, NGOs, non-profit organizations in India, had a very bad reputation because there are millions of people. There are millions of NGOs in India, non-profit organizations, and most of them have a bad reputation. They were, they are more a front for politicians and for other rich people to take the development money and siphon it off in some way. They were businesses. We said, we want to be different. We don't want to be one of them. We want to be credible. We want to be transparent. We want to be accountable. Now, to demonstrate all that, this credibility, accountability, and so on, we said, we must not take any money from anybody. Doesn't matter from public sources or private sources. We said we need to establish, need to put our money where our mouth is. We cannot be credible if we take somebody else's money. So we decided we will not accept any money until we know what we are exactly going to do. So I think that this took a lot of time. Credibility and the trust is very, very difficult to earn.
We're going to lose you, Dr. Sehgal. This is Dr. Surinder Suri M. Sehgal, Chairman, Founder, SM Sehgal Foundation. Dr. Daman S. Walia sitting right beside me. Thank you for being with us as we're looking at the country of India, how to bring development as we create the Emerald Planet.
95% of people who go to jail will eventually return to the community. Let's face it, the system isn't built to provide a smooth transition back into society, and ex-offenders face significant challenges in reintegrating after incarceration.
Finding employment, paying for housing, and regaining trust with family and neighbors are constant struggles for ex-offenders. If we don't address these very real challenges, the cycle of crime is likely to continue.
So what do we do? Well, OAR Fairfax offers opportunities, alternatives, and resources to ex-offenders and their families. They're trying to break the cycle and make our community better.
OAR is where the rubber meets the road. Do something to help someone today. Visit oarfairfax.org. Donate, volunteer, and find a way to help someone in your community today.
As a pro snowboarder, I've crashed many times while pushing the limits. However, I didn't know the impact a brain injury can have. The risk got real for me after sustaining a traumatic brain injury while I was training for the 2010 Winter Olympics. You really need to educate yourself about brain injuries and how dangerous they can be. After my injury, the doctors were saying that the helmet saved my life. Wearing a helmet to prevent severe traumatic brain injury is a must, and so is learning what you can do to prevent concussion. As a pro snowboarder, I've crashed many times while pushing the limits. However, I didn't know the impact a brain injury can have. The risk got real for me after sustaining a traumatic brain injury while I was training for the 2010 Winter Olympics. You really need to educate yourself about brain injuries and how dangerous they can be. After my injury, the doctors were saying that the helmet saved my life. Wearing a helmet to prevent severe traumatic brain injury is a must, and so is learning what you can do to prevent concussion.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, and we're looking around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, products, and also the processes that are very important to bring about development, to reduce the negative impacts of climate change, and to improve the quality of land, air, and water. And we're looking at the country of India and a very special international foundation, the Sehgal Foundation, which is both in Haryana, India, and also within the United States. And we're going to be talking to Dr. Surinder. He goes by Suri. Sehgal, he's the chairman and founder of this international organization. And sitting right beside me is Daman Walia, who's our special guest. And he's the president and CEO of ARCTECH Inc. here in Washington, D.C. And Dr. Sehgal, you're going to be coming in with us by Skype, and I think you're here already. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about your organization to refresh us on that, but why do you select specifically Haryana, India, in order to establish this? Because at one time, this is one of the most challenged, both environmentally and economically, in India. And yet you picked out an area that had some of the greatest challenges, but you've actually been able to advance development there. Tell us a little bit about that process.
We picked Mewat district in Haryana because of, because we were looking for doing some experimental or pilot projects. And Mewat happens to be a proximity to Delhi. It is just a half an hour, 45-minute, 1 hour drive from Delhi. Although it is so close to Delhi, but it seems that it has been completely left out from the development process. So we selected Mewat to see if we can bring about the change in Mewat, then we should have no difficulty in succeeding anywhere else in India or Africa or anywhere else.
Yeah, and I think that's really key to all this, is actually work with people who are interested, but at the same time have real challenges that you can address. I know there's a number of key programs and projects that you've developed over the years. Tell us about 2 or 3 of those, and why do you think these are the ones that you selected, because they could have the greatest impact in these communities in Haryana state in India?
We are focused on 3 projects, that water security, food security, and social justice. All 3 are interrelated, and they all lead to women empowerment, which is our key goal, really the empowerment of women, because a lot of work in the villages is done by women, and the women need to be empowered, and they should have a voice. So we work in these 3 areas, and we went through a very evolutionary process. When we started, we started with many projects, and we had only a couple of things in mind, that we should pick the projects which have impact, which the impact is measurable, which is cost effective, and can be demonstrated it is in a certain period of time, not that it takes ever and ever to bring about the change.
Yeah, the one thing about this I find very interesting, this goes back when you started in 1999, and you really were focusing on the females in these communities. And many of these communities, in a sense, they were just lost. And but you were actually at a very early stage advancing what now, and modern times, is becoming a real focus, is the female, the adults, and the girls, and also the elderly. So looking at the work that you've done in these major projects, again, something would have great turnaround quickly, focused on the female, but yet would lead to real economic change and environmental impact within the communities. How do you think that has really evolved over these years since you started?
Our focus was always on women empowerment, and initial focus was on young adolescent girls only, and we could see change in a very quickly, because these girls were very shy. They wouldn't open their mouth. They will sit in the back. But once you empowering them and teaching them skills, they started opening up. They started talking to you, talking back to you. And so I think we saw the change happening on a day-to-day basis. And so I think that we were very happy with it. Yes, our focus in the very beginning was agricultural development and family planning. And we ran into some of a problem because when I say our focus was on young adolescent girls, we wanted to see that they can delay their marriage. And because the marriage of young girls is very common in this area, that if they can delay the marriage by 1 or 2 or 3 years, we probably have accomplished a lot in a shorter period. So that in spite of our difficulties, we stuck with it because that is very, very important and very close to us.
Okay.
Very close to our heart.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Dr. Walia, I think you have the next question.
Yeah, Dr. Sehgal, for our audience, can you share some specifics on the impacts which you have seen in your area where you're working?
We work on water. The only way to, as I said, the only source of fresh water in this world is the rain. And or there is very limited quantities of water in the glaciers and so on, trapped in the glaciers. So we first decided that we must collect and store water. Once we did that, the collection is through, we introduced on these villages rainwater harvesting. And the only source of water is rain. So we must collect it, we must store it, we must utilize properly. So I think we could see that the water level in the surrounding villages started going up. That is, right away there's an impact that the water level is beginning to go up. And as I said earlier, when you empower a young girl and they start talking and they're not quiet and they're not shy, you can visibly see the impact. You don't need measurement, although we measure all the impact, but it was very visible. These programs are working.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Thank you.
Looking at the sustainability and, of course, resilience is all part of sustainability in these days. How do you see this as ongoing change within these villages? Because you're not just in a few villages, you're in actually hundreds of villages, and you're impacting, thousands and tens of thousands of lives. So looking at this as an ongoing process from 1999 all the way through going up to 2050, how do you see this positive change happening over these years now and in the future?
We started out in Mewat or Haryana, and Haryana is one state, and we are now in 5 states, 3 in the north, which is Haryana, Rajasthan, and Bihar, and 2 in the south, which is Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. We see that sustainability is a big, big problem. All the projects, if you don't have sustainability, because in the very beginning we had made the decision that not only the impact, whatever we do must have an impact. It must be scalable. That project which we do must be scalable on a large scale. Small is beautiful, but the big is the one which makes an impact. It must be sustainable. Now, sustainability is a dream for many development organizations. We discovered a kind of magic bullet in 2008 when we went to good rural governance program. Because if you have empowered citizens, as all of us know, an empowered individual can create miracles if given an opportunity. And we learned very quickly in the very beginning that you must involve the community from the very beginning. So if you can empower the community and empower the individual and make the governance, good governance in the rural villages effective and implemented by training, of course, of the committee, you can achieve a sustainability. I should say that we can't say 100%, but that is one way to achieve sustainability, to get the community. It must be, any project must be community-led, and the citizens must be empowered to maintain it.
Yeah, we've had some really fantastic photographs that we've just shown our domestic and international audiences. One of those was the women being taught about water and the water filtration system, then education, of course, and then the good field management practices. Are there 2 or 3 other examples that we could talk about here as far as the sustainability, resiliency that we haven't shown in the images, but yet you would like to talk about?
Primarily, it is the empowered community, because once the community buys into it and they believe that this is their own project, it does not belong to the foundation, I think we have shied away from taking credit. In fact, I was a bit critical when we saw the logo of Sehgal Foundation and so on within our own these different communities. We said, community must think it is their project. It does not belong to the foundation, and we have to maintain it. Now, there are, as I said, many examples that the literacy has increased, the children going to school has increased, the women are more now demanding, because there are a lot of programs in India like entitlements, you call entitlements, and in the US is a bad word, but over there the people, the villagers are entitled to many programs, and they must be able to, once they start accessing them from the bureaucrat, that means we have achieved. There are many examples like this that the impact is very visible.
Yeah, Dr. Walia has one question, Dr. Sehgal, but we must be quick. We've got about 30 seconds.
Well, yeah, just in India, there is a huge effort towards corporate social responsibility, and can you kind of give us your take on that, and is that helping, and what can we do to make it work better?
And we have to be very quick.
It is a wonderful legislation, because India is the only country where this legislation is in place. It needs to be followed in African countries. Here, the corporations are made responsible, that they have a responsibility towards the community.
That's fantastic. That's a good way to summarize it. This is Dr. Surinder, goes by Suri M. Sehgal, the chairman and founder of SM Sehgal Foundation. Dr. Daman Walia sitting right beside me of ARCTECH Inc. in Washington, D.C. as we create the Emerald Planet.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr.
More health care, more agricultural production, at the same time to protect the environment, to increase the quality for land, air, and water. And we have a gentleman who's joining us that actually is working on that, both across the United States and in India. This is R.J. Sehgal, who is the Executive Vice President of the S.M. Sehgal Foundation. He's coming in by Skype. And my special guest sitting right beside me in our studio here in Washington, D.C. is Dr. Daman S. Walia, is the President and CEO of ARCTECH, Inc. And thank you for being back with us.
Well, thank you.
Glad to have you. Jay, you're coming in by Skype, and welcome.
Thank you very much, and nice to see you, and thank you, Dr. Hancock, and thank you, Dr. Walia, and the Emerald Planet for having us present our work to your domestic as well as the international audience.
Well, we're really pleased to have you. Tell us a little bit about the Sehgal Foundation itself, but more than that, this special project you have called Transform Lives, One School at a Time. I love that slogan. So tell us about that.
Thank you. Sehgal Foundation has been working in the rural communities for last 18 years now. We have experimented a lot of programs and to try to see which programs actually make impact to the communities. Over the last few years, we realized that the three key programs through our research, this basically we do a tremendous amount of research to see what programs make an impact. We realized that we need to scale down. We did quite a few programs, but then we scaled it down to good rural governance. We said we need to make an impact in the water area, and we need to make an impact in agriculture area. We firmly believe if we want to fight poverty, if we really want to make an impact in reducing the poverty in the country, we must work in the agriculture field and water field directly, as well as bringing the good governance to people. Those are the key programs. We also realize that impact is not just with the elders in the villages. We also need the community, the children, the school children in the villages. So we said we need to start a program in the villages, what we call the Transform Lives, One School at a Time. Now, this program particularly works with the village level institution, which is called the School Management Committee. This is basically empowering the school management committee to run the schools effectively, bring the resources to the school so the children have a better learning environment, because these are the future citizens of these villages, and they need to make sure that they understand what are the entitlements and how the villages need to prosper for the future. So we work on very closely with the the school management committees to empower them and empower the children to make sure the schools run effectively, because of educated communities will bring sustainability for the future in the villages.
Now, looking at the images that we have here that you've shared with us, I mean, these are very powerful images. Talk about some of the key components of this. We're looking at something as simple as hand washing, which can control 95% of the illnesses among the youth and also the adults. Using this as an example to the adults, how they need to care for themselves. In other words, taking the children and reaching the adults. Tell us a little more about some of the components of this initiative. Very simple things, but yet they have great impact.
Yeah, Dr. Hancock, you're absolutely correct. You know, you have to approach it in a simplistic way to make an impact. And you know, there are 640,000 government primary schools in India, almost 250 students average in each one of these schools. You can see there's a lot of schools with a lot of children. Now, but these schools are highly depleted, basically. You know, they don't have the basic facilities like water. You know, water is so critical for the children. How can you expect a child to be in school for 8 hours not having water? How can you have, especially the girls, no toilet facilities? The toilet facilities are there, but they may be run down. I'm generalizing, of course. There's a lot of schools have good facilities as well, but most of the schools we have seen, these are the basic facilities which lack. India has a tremendous program in midday meal. When you go to the villages, the midday meal is served in a very backward or very open area where it's not hygienic and not very clean. So we said, let's approach these basic problems that, as you rightly said, very simplistic problems and basic problems. Let's see how can we work with the governance, because governance, as I said, is very, very important. School management committees has to be empowered, has to know how they are going to work in the villages. That's the biggest thing that we work with in the empowering the school management committee as to how they can bring the facilities to the school. Of course, we work on harvesting the rainwater. As much as water, there's a lot of roof area in these schools. We make sure the roofs are repaired and harvest as much as water available in the rainy season to store them in the tanks and to make sure that water is available for the clean drinking water is available for the children to be. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the toilets are extremely important for the young girls, because the young girls, boys can still manage one way or the other, but the girls who manage without the toilet in the school is very, very impossible practically. And so we make sure to if we want to bring the girls to the schools, we need to make sure the girls have a proper toilet facilities in the school. We also make sure that the school environment is safe environment for the children to be in. There's many times boundary walls which protects the school from any vandalism or any outside people coming in. It does not exist. So we simply work with the communities, work with the villagers to make sure there's a proper boundary wall, there's a proper safe infrastructure, safe and welcoming environment for the children in the school. And I mentioned very earlier that we have this midday meal, and make sure the midday meal is cooked hygienically and cooked in a proper place so that it is served properly to the children. So I think these are the basic infrastructures that we look at. And the key to all this is the empowerment of the school management committee. It's just not possible for us to just hand these things to make sure these facilities will sustain for the future.
Yeah, looking at these images and talk about the boundary walls and the water harvesting and all that, it shows that you really are reaching into the community and providing the things that they need in order to increase the opportunities for them to actually learn on a day-to-day basis. Dr. Walia, I think you have the next question.
Yeah, Jay, India as a continent, gets the second largest amount of rain on it. And right. Here is a country which we continue to have this challenge of availability of the water to people. Mm-hmm. So give me your perspective. You guys, your foundation has taken on to not only address the water issue, but also address the education and these. So how do you see these to be intertwined, and how can we create a way to provide water for everyone?
Right. You're absolutely correct. I mean, the India gets most of its rainwater during the monsoon season, and we see to it that how can most of the water what we have seen in the future is the water comes into the villages, but it runs off and it's not available for them because, as I said, rainy season is those 4 or 5 months a year. And if we don't store that water properly and keep it available for the children, especially in the schools, then it's very, very difficult for the children to retain the children in the school throughout the day. So water management, working with the children, not just we are saying water. But we work on these projects, we work along with the children and teaching them the importance of water. It's just not providing things, but it's also making sure the children understand that the water is very important and they need to sustain it and they need to make sure they use it very judiciously and very conservatively so that it is available for longer period of time. And also teaching them the rainwater harvesting techniques, so they can take these practices with them to in their houses and in their other places. Similarly, I talked about governance. Governance is a very, very important aspect for the Sehgal Foundation. We feel that the sustainability comes from the governance. We work very closely with the girls, especially on the life skills education and digital literacy aspect of it, making sure that the governance piece, you can see here in the pictures that girls are taught on the computers, especially on the governance and the entitlements they have available for that particular village to sustain those programs. Similarly, most of these communities are agrarian communities. As we know, most of the rural India, their mainstay is agriculture. So and agriculture and water goes hand in hand. We also work with the school children to make sure they understand the importance of water on the agriculture perspective also. That's how we intertwine, because what we teach to the elders in the villages on the water conservation, on the governance, on agriculture, we must also incorporate that in the schools, so the future generations are well prepared to take on these projects as we go forward.
Yeah, looking at all of this, and thank you for that answer, we've just about run out of time, Jay. So looking at this Transform Lives one school at a time, what would you want to leave with our domestic and international audiences that are 3 or 4 of the key components? We have to be very quick. We have about 40 seconds to do this, but you want to leave these impressions on them as we go back through some of these slides that you provided.
The key component, Sam, is that we need to make sure the children understand, first of all, they have the facilities. We need to build these facilities. It is impossible for one organization to do everything. There's, as I said, 640,000 primary schools approximately. And how do we see to it how this project can be expanded? And the governance, creating a movement into governance is the way to do that. So I think that's how we feel that we want to make that.
Okay, this is R.J. Sehgal. He is the Executive Vice President, SM Sehgal Foundation. Sitting right beside me is Dr. Daman S. Walia, President and CEO of ARCTECH. Thank you for being with us as we're looking at all these development projects as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
"95% of people who go to jail will eventually return to the community." Let's face it, the system isn't built to provide a smooth transition back into society, and ex-offenders face significant challenges in reintegrating after incarceration.
Finding employment, paying for housing, and regaining trust with family and neighbors are constant struggles for ex-offenders. If we don't address these very real challenges, the cycle of crime is likely to continue.
So what do we do? Well, OAR Fairfax offers opportunities, alternatives, and resources to ex-offenders and their families. They're trying to break the cycle and make our community better.
OAR is where the rubber meets the road. Do something to help someone today. Visit oarfairfax.org. Donate, volunteer, and find a way to help someone in your community today.
As a pro snowboarder, I've crashed many times while pushing the limits. However, I didn't know the impact brain injury can have. The risk got real for me after sustaining a traumatic brain injury while I was training for the 2010 Winter Olympics. You really need to educate yourself about brain injuries and how dangerous they can be. After my injury, the doctors were saying that the helmet saved my life. Wearing a helmet to prevent severe traumatic brain injury is a must, and so is learning what you can do to prevent concussion. As a pro snowboarder, I've crashed many times while pushing the limits. However, I didn't know the impact brain injury can have. The risk got real for me after sustaining a traumatic brain injury while I was training for the 2010 Winter Olympics. You really need to educate yourself about brain injuries and how dangerous they can be. After my injury, the doctors were saying that the helmet saved my life. Wearing a helmet to prevent severe traumatic brain injury is a must, and so is learning what you can do to prevent concussion.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Oh, welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. on a week-to-week basis as we look around the globe, looking for those 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of EmeraldPlanet and the EmeraldPlanet TV. And we're talking about the country of India and also looking at all the various green practices that are being developed there. India is a very large, dynamic country, almost 1.4 billion people, yes, billion. And at the same time is how can we provide all the basic infrastructure that they need. We have a gentleman who is actually working on that. R.J. Sehgal is the Executive Vice President of the S.M. Sehgal Foundation, both of India and the United States. He's coming in by Skype, and sitting right beside me is our special guest, Dr. Daman S. Walia, who's the President and CEO of ARCTECH Inc. in Washington, D.C. And Jay, I think you're already with us. Welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Yes, hi. Hi, Dr. Walia, Dr. Daman.
Yeah, glad to have you with us. The theme for this particular topic is Partnerships Ensures India's Future. Tell us what you mean by partnerships, and why do you think this is so important as India becomes one of the largest economies and soon to be the largest population country on the planet?
Thank you, Sam. Thank you once again for giving me this opportunity. You just mentioned 1.4 billion people. India is a large country with diverse population, diverse languages. Every state practically has different languages, different aspects, different. And it is without partnerships very difficult to reach the rural development work that we want to take to. We created certain models in water. We created certain models in agriculture and certain models for good governance, good rural governance. And we need to see to it how do we penetrate and how we create this as a movement and take it all over India. And it is very difficult for any one individual, one organization to be everywhere. It will become practically impossible. And that's where we feel it is very important for us to create partnerships to take this work to every corner of India. And that's why we feel partnerships are very, very critical to expansion, to take the work to a larger scale, to make a larger impact.
Now, looking at the work that you're doing, what are the different types of partnerships that you have? And do you differentiate between the different partnerships, or it's a general partnership that you want to have and relate to different projects? Just how do you structure that so that you don't have a lot of overlap, but at the same time you're able to target the resources that are coming from these various partnerships?
Very good question. I think the partnerships, to explain to you type of the partnerships, some of the biggest partnership that we have is with the communities. We must work with the community. We must understand, we must work hand in hand to understand and what are their needs and how those needs can be addressed. It is where, yes, there will be tremendous amount of needs, but we have to see where we can help and where we can develop partnerships with other organizations to fill the gap where we cannot do it ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, no one person or no one individual can do everything. So we have to work with the partners, work with the communities to do that work. So we very closely work. That's our biggest partners. That's how we consider. And the second aspect of it is that we also work with the governments to make sure we have a good partnership with the governments as well, because sustainability will come from the government and government policy. How do we impact those policies to make sure they're more effective at the grassroots? Of course, we also look at the resources. Where are the resources that are coming from for us? Because it takes technical resources. For example, technology exists all over the places. How do we get access to the technology and how do we apply that technology to the grassroots? We also look at how the volunteers and interns, because there's a lot of knowledge that exists with the volunteers and with the internships that they bring quite a diversity to our program. They give us a verification to our programs actually function effectively or not. And so with that partnership is also extremely, extremely important. In addition to that, resources are also very critical, financial resources. So we also look at how we can create partnerships to bring those financial resources, to do the work and take this impact on a larger scale.
I tell you, that's a very broad embrace that you have across communities. But reaching into these communities, I think that's really critical. And this is something that I know that your foundation really looks at, is how do you actually embrace the people and listen to them and talk to them first. And instead of a top down, you're really looking the inverted pyramid of, the bottom up, and allowing the people to be at the top of this very broad base, which actually becomes a new paradigm for the pyramid. Dr. Walia, I think you have another question.
Yeah, Jay, I'm really interested in, the partnerships you talked about. In fact, next week we'll be visiting with the Baramati in Maharashtra, which is an area which has a similar challenge, no rain, arid conditions. And so what I would like to understand from you, how can we help create a partnership with all the successes you have in Haryana, also with the people in the Baramati?
Right. No, that's as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think it's very important that we need to develop partnerships so what we have to see is that we have to develop coalitions, and we have to develop we have to understand each other. What are the visions, and what is the mission of a particular organization, and how can we address those particular, for example, the for-profit organizations, the companies, and the large for-profit organizations. They have their corporate social responsibility aspects of it, and they have their defined vision and mission. What do they want to what is the key thing they want to take? And we have to see how we can help them accomplish that vision and mission. For example, we have a very good partnership with the Mosaic Foundation. Mosaic is a very large fertilizer company, and they want to see to it that the communities are empowered and the farmers are empowered. There's a food security, and since we have these models on agriculture and water, we work with them very closely on helping them accomplish their vision and mission. And that's how we critically look at how we can create a good partnership. Of course, it is very, I mentioned a little earlier also that we cannot do everything, but we have to work with other organizations, like Dr. Walia, you're mentioning. The organizations that exist in Maharashtra must have their own core expertise, their own core values. And we see to it, how do we align with those core values to work together there? We can take our governance piece along with what they are doing to be able to do more effectively what they are doing. And of course, for us, it becomes a lot of learning as well, because we want to continue to learn and replicate and continue to enhance our models so that they're up to date and current and working effectively.
Now, looking at all of this, we're talking about these partnerships, the critical nature of it, how you're looking at the mission and the vision of each of these collaborators that you are working with. How do you actually go about creating these partnerships besides just understanding what they want to do, how they want to do it, the fact that they may exist in the community? There must be other steps that you go through and other considerations that you have to make sure that it's the proper fit for you as an official in the United States, 501c3 nonprofit organization, and you have the same similar standing in India. So how do you make sure all this message together and one complements the other, but still keeping the focus on the citizens within the local communities and the schools?
No, yeah, you're absolutely correct. I think that, again, creating a coalition is very, very important. We cannot be know-it-all and do-it-all. We have to work very, very closely in developing these coalitions and developing these partnerships to be able to replicate what we do, as well as they're looking at what their models are. Maybe those models are applicable to where we work, and bringing those models into our villages as well. we are bringing their models as well as working on our models. So developing a coalition is extremely, extremely important to a good partnership. And that's how we see taking these partnerships and especially creating a good working environment, good at the village level, basically, making a good working environment at the village level so the villagers are empowered to do what their key needs are.
That's fantastic. Dr. Walia, why don't you ask the next question, please?
Yeah, Jay, thank you very much for sharing your this vision for the coalition. And of course, I'm as a scientist been involved with helping create solutions for agriculture.
Absolutely.
And one of the area which I continue to see a big problem is the soil health issue. And so give me some as to what your foundation is doing in addressing the soil health issue in that
Sure.
area.
And we have we only have about 60 seconds left, so
I'll try so we have developed a program on doing a soil health program with the villages where we do the testing and making sure the soils are and giving them solutions on what type of deficiencies are in the soils and how they can work to improve their soils so that they have a better productivity, because the only source of income for the farmers are the agriculture, are the one small piece of land, and whatever best productivity they can get from that is the key goal for us, to make sure that the farmer has some earnings. Once the farmers start to improve their earnings, they have more flexibility to send their children to school, have more facilities for their school. So we work very closely with the farmers on making sure that their productivity increase, especially from the soil health perspective. We also show them how they can add micronutrients, what type of micronutrients can be added, and show them how the crops can improve versus what their old practices and what the practices with the intervention that we suggest to farmers.
Jay, we're going to lose you right now. This is R.J. Sehgal, the Executive Vice President of the Sehgal Foundation. Sitting right beside me is Dr. Daman S. Walia, President CEO of ARCTECH. And we would like to thank our production crew and also say that the equipment and facilities provided by Fairfax Public Access, Fairfax, Virginia. And Damon, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear viewers, as we create the Emerald Planet.
Thank you.